Hi everyone, we are here at iGel's Disrupt 2024 and I have with me a bit of an EUC industry celebrity, Mr. Mark Templeton. Welcome, Mark. First off, what I wanted to tell everyone out there who's watching this is this guy is legitimate, okay? I might embarrass him a little bit now, but Mark has been a very senior leader of many companies. We'll talk a little bit about that, Mark. But Mark gives his time to all of us in the industry. And I just want to thank you so much for being a great friend and also just helping all of us because there is never a time where you say no, that you're too busy. We really appreciate the counsel that you give us as a leader, and you're a very genuine person, and that's rare today. So thanks for coming along today.
You said you weren't going to make me cry, and then you just kicked off with it. Well, you know, when I was young in my career, for some reason, people with experience took an interest in me and gave me time and advice, expecting nothing in return. And it took me a lot of years to realize that they were just paying it forward, you know, because they owed so much to so many people along their journey. And I guess that kind of got embedded in me. And then, of course, if someone is a Citrite, I'm always part of their family and vice versa. And that's what you do for family. You always help. You always say yes as best as you can.
Well, thanks again. It's good to see you. We're going to talk a little bit about EUC and some of the industry today, and also have a little bit of fun with you as well. I know you're up for it.
Always.
Let's talk a little bit about the history. Now, people talk about your long reign as the Citrix CEO and being there from day dot, developing the company and those types of things. People seem to always focus on that, but the reality is you haven't stopped since Citrix. We're talking DigitalOcean CEO, president of WorkSpot as well, and a bunch of other fingers in multiple pies, getting involved with the technology and industry, and you never do stop. I think, you know, instead of having your finger on the pulse, really, you're sort of the guy, I was trying to think of an analogy here, you're not the guy, you know, on the paddles, you're sort of the guy that's giving the adrenaline shot, is what I like to think. So keeping really in tune with what's going on with EUC and what's coming up next in our industry. So I just wanted to have you talk to me a little bit about EUC. It's an acronym that's, you know, it's yet another acronym that people come up with in our industry, which we love to do. Tell me a little bit about the history and where you've sort of seen it go over the past years, and then let's talk a little bit about the future.
Well, that's a long story, but we'll try to take it in some chunks. So, well, first of all, you know, when I retired from Citrix, one of the things that didn't retire was my love for technology. And back in the day, in the 80s, I got smitten by the potential of software to enable people, humans, etc. And in those days, no one really did it to make a fortune. You know, they did it to make a difference, right? And so the whole idea of doing something you love that made a difference was just a powerful force. And that's carried me through. Carried me through my days as a startup marketing guy to Citrix. And then took a little time off. I joined some boards, public boards, private boards, ran DigitalOcean for a while, and recruited my successor so they could go public and keep growing. I've had a really interesting seat along the way to observe all the change in technology, the change in customer needs and the kinds of problems that they face, and to do it as part of a team that is very passionate about it and not doing it for the money, but doing it for the love and the you know, as I think Steve Jobs said, to put a dent in the universe. This whole notion of EUC, I don't even know who invented this term. I really don't love it, and I think that the only people who use it are the people who grew up in the virtual desktops, apps, VDI world. I tend not to use it a lot myself, but I know it is an important term for our industry. The whole thing started when, as the saying goes, apps were fat, pipes were thin, and people needed remote access. And they needed remote access if they traveled, if they worked from a branch office, just sort of, there wasn't much work from home. A lot of customers realized that, wow, these applications run faster, they're more secure, they're way easier to manage because they're centralized, and I can deliver them anywhere. In those days, over dial-up connections. That's kind of where it all got its start, and then obviously we decided at Citrix we needed a lot more headroom, and we thought this technology was way more important than for simply remote access. And as we grew and customers started to deploy it to give access to applications and to deliver applications in any and all circumstances, not necessarily remotely, they found out that this was a whole way to do end user computing and to do it more economically, get longer life from their desktop and endpoint hardware, to have a better security model, address all the data leakage sort of issues that happen along the way. This is long before cyber was a big issue. And I think that's where the origination of EUC came from. We imagined, I think, along the way that, this is the way to deliver every application. There was a time, believe it or not, when I believed that the ATM application should be delivered through a streaming methodology. And the reason is, again, security, managing updates, upgrades, because the ATM app is probably the most widely used app in the world, even today, because there are a lot of people that use an ATM app that don't use a browser, maybe even they don't even use a mobile, right? I think that's where the roots of so-called EUC are. I think where it's going is where we really imagined it going, because there are a lot of new technologies, really sort of the hybrid multi-cloud platforms that are going to enable something I like to call the worldwide computer, all right? That through this worldwide computer, you'll be able to stream desktops and applications anywhere. And much in the same way that Netflix streams media, desktops and apps are a form of interactive media. And this worldwide computer will be the platform for what I like to call the new EUC, and that's the Enterprise Utility Computing Service.
I remember when VDI first came out, we were both connected to the same data center essentially. I had to suck it up with slow latency and keystrokes. Then eventually system administrators and IT execs started to make things a little bit nicer, I think, for a worldwide workforce, and start rolling out things that are more local. How is what you're talking about different to that?
If you think of a company like Netflix or Apple TV Plus, all of the streaming media folks, they actually have a hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure in place so that you're streaming from the edge of their computer network, right? So it deals with latency because they have hundreds of points of presence around the world. It's just that in the sort of the legacy sort of model of VDI, EUC, virtual desktops, whatever you want to call it, you had to deal with your own data center. Very few customers built colos around the world. They put equipment in branch offices trying to deal with the last mile latency issue. And today, with a hybrid multi-cloud approach, your last mile is actually a very low latency connection because you can use the worldwide computer, which is an interconnect between private clouds and public clouds on a worldwide basis.
Is that technology accessible to us today to be able to roll out? Like, what does it look like for an IT exec that's doubled down and invested in VDI in the past and are looking to migrate to something like what you're describing?
Well, there's always work to do.
Yeah.
You know, if you know what I mean. Because I'm talking about an enterprise utility computing service that will take more time to actually completely come together. Mm-hmm. For example, at WorkSpot, we are a SaaS offering in terms of the control plane and how you actually manage the system and provision desktops and apps and provide permissions and identity and all of those things. But it'll run on any private cloud and the popular hyperscalers, public cloud. And it does it through a single pane of glass. People can be set up through that pane of glass in any number of points of presence around the world. So it exists today. We're one of the only companies that have that kind of a model. I expect there'll be more, coming, to the same conclusion that we came to, and that is you put the complexity of a system in a SaaS model that's multi-tenant so that it scales across hundreds and thousands of customers, but then allows them to run in their on-premise infrastructure or on hyperscale cloud infrastructure or any combination of the two.
How does that then marry up with iGel, for example, reducing TCO on the user end devices, and also really being concerned about having a secure environment where people are running? Just
like an electric utility requires appliances that get plugged in, an enterprise utility computing infrastructure requires appliances that plug in, and those appliances happen to need some type of operating system and a management infrastructure. And that's what iGel does. They are the appliance operating system for this computing utility. And so any device that is running iGel, you plug it into the network, and it will find your subscription to a desktop or app or whatever it is you're trying to get from the utility.
One other question I wanted to ask you was about COVID, and all around the world we worked remotely and we were locked down, particularly so in some areas of the world, and we thought no one's ever going to be going to an office again. And we also thought, geez, these guys that are selling VDI and that type of thing, they're going to make millions and millions of dollars out of this new way of working. But it's almost like people are now being drawn back to the office. I'm seeing it in Sydney and seeing it all around the world. How do you think the market's sort of changed with, obviously a massive increase of remote working and then probably a bit of a dip as people start getting back into the office with regard to EUC and that type of thing?
Well, first of all, companies are like people. They have different personalities, they have different ways they want to dress, different types of vehicles they want to drive and so forth, and homes and styles, etc. And so work styles are exactly the same. Not a single work style is appropriate for every company or even every function. The good part of COVID that forced people to, work from home, really put a good stake in the ground around technologies that allowed people to collaborate. Video conferencing really came of age during this period of time. Other types of collaboration tools, shared whiteboards, things like Google's apps, which were designed from scratch for collaboration. These things started to come of age, and people started to see the potential of them. Those same tools work just as well inside an office. It turns out if you're working for let's say a medium-sized enterprise, you might be in an office park or have a branch office nearby or whatever. Those places are just as remote from each other as they are from your home. And so these tools, it turns out, work just as well on campus as they do in a work from home kind of scenario. So that's all the good sort of that was learned, forced way through lockdowns and so forth. But I think on the other side of the coin is there's no real replacement for the human connection. Mm-hmm. There are certain types of businesses where apprenticeship is essential for creating and developing people. Banking, a lot of aspects of banking require that. You could go on and on and on, and the medical field and so forth and so on. So now the pendulum is swinging back the other way, where people are trying to find that sort of happy medium that uses the advantages of work from anywhere, but also enables the interpersonal connections that are needed for people to develop. We saw it with students, kids that had to work from home, take classes over video conferencing. All the science that has studied them says they missed a huge part of socialization and social development. And your social development doesn't stop when you graduate from high school. Social development is essential to cultures and building strong cultures in business. Every company is finding that sort of happy medium. The kind of technology we're talking about is independent of where you work, from home, from an office, etc., because this whole notion of a enterprise utility computing facility allows the computing a company needs to be centralized and delivered to all these places, and gives the flexibility to work from anywhere, on campus or off campus.
Well, Mark, we've done some important discussions this morning about EUC and a bunch of different things. I've got a few. We're actually here in Miami at Disrupt 2024. I thought I'd bring some of a flavour of home, make myself feel a bit more at home, and I thought you maybe would like some breakfast. What do you think?
I'll tell you what I think. I'm worried.
Okay, so I've got Vegemite. This is not actually traditional Vegemite. It's not alcoholic. This is in a squeeze pack, which normally it comes in a jar, but I thought squeeze pack. Yeah. I have some toast here.
I'm not familiar with Vegemite.
But you've had toast.
Marmite, I'm familiar with.
Well, that's an inferior product that we don't like to talk about. That's from our friends in the UK. They'll claim that tastes good. Now, you are familiar with toast.
All right. I'm game.
Okay.
Yes, I know about toast.
Okay. A small amount is key, right? So I'll dose you with a little bit there. Hang on, quickly spread it.
Yeah.
And now this is actually made, it's a bit like a cooking show now, isn't it? This is made from the leftovers from beer creation. So it is very Australian. Yeast extract. Have a bite there in the corner and just tell me what goes through your mind when you're tasting it. It's like a fine wine.
It reminds me of what I saw coming out the backside of a nuclear power plant.
You said the backside of, so I was a bit worried what you were going to say then for a second. He's taking a big bite as well. It's quite salty. It's got umami flavors.
Yeah.
It's a traditional thing. We like it with grilled cheese. In Australia. What do you think? Give me a bit of a rundown. What's going through the taste buds?
Well, that salty, almost anchovy-ish.
Anchovy-ish,
which I happen to love anchovies.
Okay.
Flavor. Texture of the toast works with it really well. And I actually like it better than Marmite.
Really? You're just saying that because I'm here, surely.
No.
Well, Mark Templeton, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I've got a little friend for you. There you go.
Great.
He can clip on there.
All right.
And then you got to wear that with pride.
I will.
That's
My grandchildren will absolutely love this.
That's a symbol that you've been here in the studio with me. We've had a chat, and it's great to see you again. Thank you very much. And we'll see you around Disrupt.
It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thanks, Mark.
A real joy. Thank you.